Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Moran.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Shanna Israel, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of cover some ground because we were talking just as we open, but Shanna is an entrepreneur. She's an artist, and she is taking what she normally does in normal times and converted it into something that's, I think, is pretty cool. There's so much bad news, Shanna, about COVID and how it's impacting lives and all of the negative things. But I'd like to look at companies. We had Cheetah on earlier, who they were a wholesale food provider to restaurants, and since the industry of restauranting is crushed, it's killing their business as well. So they're like, we're also going to provide wholesale groceries to consumers. And they took their platform and expanded it, and they've pivoted pretty effectively. And I think you've done the same thing. Plus, it's art, and I always like to support art. I always like to support ladies, of course, too. But first, let's just do a background real fast on art fun parties and what that's about. And then transition into the pivot to, hey, holy crap, we have this platform, and now I have to deal with COVID.
Sure. So our fun parties, they're virtual, online, interactive parties where you can still celebrate life using art and fun. They really capture the once-in-a-lifetime memory for the individual. And for me, it was really important because, I was supposed to launch this company it was all in person, and it was supposed to launch the end of February. So you can imagine, worst time to launch.
Yeah.
But this is where you find creativity. You're forced to look at this reality in the face and then, decide if you're going to break or you're going to triumph with trying to find better and different solutions, and ones we're really not used to. So becoming 100% virtual platform was not something I was ever anticipating or expecting, but here we are. And honestly, it's forced me to be even more creative than I thought I was going to be initially. So that's the good news in all of this. And I'm glad to hear other companies are thinking the same way. And when forced to try to find better solutions in this crazy, world we're living in.
Yeah, it is a crazy world that we're living in, and we are having to adjust what we do. And also, I want to point people to, I'm going to put the banner up here in a second, information, this background stuff on Shanna and what she's done. And it was a great piece in Women's Business Daily. So I'm going to post that link here right now, so you all can read that. There's a lot of background stuff that's covered there in case you missed something. Talk a little bit about what the model was supposed to be. And one day when we go back to having regular people interacting like humans instead of over a computer, talk about what was the program.
What was really just taking your story in art and focusing on children specifically. That was the market that I was really focused on starting this. And I would take memorabilia from their childhood and basically make a party around it where we can tell their story to their friends through an art piece. And that's exciting for me because that's what I do and have done really all of my life with all the entertainers I've worked with. And so now I get to do it with children who really have just such a fresh outlook on life. That was an exciting approach for me to do. But now we've taken that concept and also provided that as an experience, but then added some layers to it to make it really unique. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. It does. It sounds like a lot of fun. And just for the audience's sake, some of the names that are associated with Shanna professionally are Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, Madonna, Target. These are heavy hitter brands. What about what you do? Make someone like Madonna, because Madonna can get anybody to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like she can afford all of it, and she has total creative control over everything, And so she looks at what you do. What does that hurdle look like? And then what does Madonna say? Like she hired this drummer, and Omar Hakim is probably, I don't know, gig for gig, night for night, song for song. You're not going to find a better drummer. And he says, I'm not going. And she says, name your price. He names his price and he goes, right? So she can get anybody. What does that look like when it comes to what you do?
Well, I've always been an out of the box thinker. And when I say that, it sounds like a fun and games and a great experience, but really it's extremely challenging when you want to think outside of the box and really navigate that path. So I always looked for artists that did the same thing. And I think eventually when you stay in your lane and you really understand what that means, and so does the other artist. And so when you see that kind of work with each other, you appreciate on a different level, So for me, I always strive to show and present something that people have not seen before. And so with Madonna and all the other artists I work with, that's my personal challenge, is how do I get to something and somebody and show them something that's special and unique for them, for somebody who has everything in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do. And most of the time I succeed. And so that's my thrill of being an artist and creative director.
It's incredible, though. I mean, we had Allie Willis was on the show, and Allie has written, 100 platinum records. She wrote September for Earth, Wind, and Fire, a bunch of great songs. And she also became an art director for videos, especially back when videos were really cool, like Blondie, one of some of Blondie's videos. And it's interesting because when you see her house, she's passed on, but when you would go to her house, there's just so much input, creative input from all these different directions. And she's just such a powerhouse with no limits, visually, artistically, and everything. You have to be akin to that, where like you don't have normal risk. When Steven Tyler calls you, that guy's seen everything. Like how do you, or maybe you're ahead of them. We had Andy Summers from The Police on the show, and I said, artistically, who's in front of you? And he's like, nobody. My job is to be way past what everybody else is, but not too far, so that they can come with me.
Yeah.
So how do you reckon something like that? Someone as incredible as Steven Tyler and Madonna, even Target. Target has people who are pros at figuring out what's good and what works. How does that work for you?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture of how to approach it. First of all, you have to go into thinking, what are they looking for? And what's the objective? I think that's where anyone has to start, because a lot of people are trying to get to these big brands, first of all. And so it's like, where do you fit? How can you, fill those shoes, and what that match is going to look like? So I always look for the different scenarios from a marketing perspective and from a business perspective, because their brand, at the end of the day, they all have business objectives. So really for me, and that's where my specialty is, and I think that is not a common thing that I've seen with artists in general, is how to match the marketing and business objective with also the art goal in mind. And so that's where I differentiate and try to find their long-term goal, and then try to find a place to fit myself within that. So Madonna was on her tour, and she had VIPs that were looking for some wearable art items. And then with Steven Tyler, we teamed up with a charity through VH1 Save the Music. And so we did a charity project together. So it just depends on the different scenarios of, like I said, of what the objective is for each brand, and then really trying to, chip away to get there, because it's a mixture of hard work, dedication, contacts, luck. It's a whole recipe of all that stuff.
Yeah. I want to spend a little more time in this, because this is really fascinating. Again, to work for big, and there's a lot of brands. It's not just those three. So
yeah.
But someone like Steven Tyler comes to you. Are you asking him questions? Are you asking his art director questions? And it didn't have to be Steven Tyler, because I don't want to break any NDAs and that kind of thing. But when you have this client and you're talking to them, are you looking to run up against the edge of what they know, what they want, and then push them past it? It seems like that's sort of your job, is get them past where they're comfortable and go, okay, now I can see where the space is. Or do you work within their vision and just realize it for them? Because that's viable too.
Both. I think it depends on the artist, and I think it depends on the goal, and I think it depends on their comfort level, to be honest with you, because some want to push boundaries, and some don't. And some want to stay, kind of neutral with what their brand looks like already. And so it's really individualized project every time that I go into it. And so you have to listen to their wants, desires, and needs. And then my job is to formulate around that, because you can't go in saying, I want this, I want that. And then they come to you with, no, it's really a combination effort of what both parties can really enhance together.
Give us a sense for what inspires you. When you see big major brands like this doing things, you go, wow. And you pay attention. What are some examples of that?
Oh, well, nowadays, I'm really inspired by brands that do something that's very edgy, very cool, but also bring in the human connection level to it. And so something that's really inspiring and that can change a life. That's my passion at this point in my life. I always has been, but more now than ever. And so like I saw a Nike commercial that Dwayne Wade did. He helped that he didn't even realize that he helped, and through our different artistic journeys himself. And I was just so moved by that. And I just give so much credit to these brands that are making these combination efforts of showing how you can challenge art and how you can challenge advertising and messaging and marketing and putting it all together flawlessly and really, changing the world. I mean, that's why I got into art in the first place, is because I saw with art and word, which essentially is advertising, marketing, that you can literally change the world. You can change lives, and, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the not, depending on what the end goal is per person. But that's the power that I have always seen in art and has made me, and pop culture is my driving force. So that's how I got to where I am today. It's like changing the world for the better and working with these people that have such huge fans that have the power to do so. That's always been my driving force.
My girlfriend, she used to work for some of the top ad agencies in the world back when that was really, really a thing. They're still around, but I remember a Nike ad from the early mid 90s, and it had Emmett Smith and the Cowboys, and he was just a machine, and he was all sweaty, and he's doing sit-ups on this elevated bench, and he says, "Oh man, I need a break." And he lays back and goes, "Break's over." And he goes back to work. It was during that just do it phase. But the imagery and the artistry in that moment it's stuck with me for almost 30 years now. Those are incredible times. Mm-hmm. Going back to my girlfriend's comments and working in the ad agencies where you had real like writers and artists working together all the time to encapsulate that. Mm-hmm. Do you see enough of that these days, or do you feel like a lot of things are, I don't know, just not of that quality? And does it matter?
Well, it's changed a lot. And so anyway, a lot of ad agencies are breaking down to a lot of freelancing, jobs. And so they're not what they used to be. Like, they're not full departments really anymore. And so the landscape has changed a lot. Or there's in-house departments for big brands. It just depends. But I think creative minds are always there. And I think the execution is always going to be there. I think that our times as a whole is just, different. Like when I was around those ads, it was Think Different with Apple, and it was, Salute Vodka. I mean, when you think of these were consistent ads that kept going. But now I think Nike's on par with, advertising and marketing. I just think it's just different landscape. And I think there's more independent brands and more independent thinking. So it's just a bit different, and they're still creative. It just depends on, again, what they're looking to in their budgets, to be honest.
So speaking of what they want in their budget and that kind of thing, when people approach you for an Art Fund party, I guess let's go back to like the new form of this. Obviously, you're doing it remote. What kinds of things are people coming up with that you're able to facilitate for them?
So right now we're doing experiences. So it's really a culmination of my background where, I worked with all these big brands and then still want to work with children because I just love the fresh outlook that, kids have. And so I really combine the effort there to make these one-of-a-kind experiences. So you get the experience of me creating your story and art with you, with, your one-of-a-kind items through your life. It's really a time capsule that you can have such a special memory for the rest of your life and document that piece of your story. And then I have another option, which is called the sports stream. So when I saw the challenges that we had, starting with staying safe at home and this pandemic, we were limited to a Zoom box, and people couldn't do their favorite things anymore, go to their hobbies, enjoy a live experience. And so I created this with legendary, iconic pro sports photographer Andy Bernstein, who has taken, I don't know if you saw The Last Dance, but I'm sure so many people have, and he's taken, I would say, the majority of those iconic shots. Yes. And so I said to Andy, I'm like, how cool would it be if we brought the court and we brought the opportunity of feeling pros at virtually, where anyone can experience it, And so he was on board. He loved the concept. And together we made this virtual shoot where a person can get photographed, by Andy via their computer. And then we bring it into a virtual 3D animated court so they actually feel like they're playing on that court. and have a faux fan section. And then at the very end, we have a curated photograph, and it's signed by Andy, and the family can print it and frame it when they're at home. So everything is done at home. Nobody has to worry about getting, sick with just, being out in public. And it's truly, regardless of pandemic, it's such a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's such a unique opportunity, and really turns such a negative into an amazing positive. And that for me is really the exciting part.
Let me pump up Andrew Bernstein a little bit too, because you're right. Like when I was watching The Last Dance, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, he took that picture, all these iconic moments. He did a whole book with Kobe Bryant, and we had him on the show before. You guys should go check that out. This is the guy that could be taking pictures for your party. I mean, you're right. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer in the NBA for picture taking. He's been doing it for decades. And Shanna's like, I got him. He's going to come over and, come over virtually, take the pictures, or, I just think it's such a neat idea that to be able to do that. What other kind of things are you cooking up besides having, the pictures and that kind of thing? What else is out there?
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
What other kind of things are you cooking up besides having, the pictures and that kind of thing? What else is out there?
To be seen. I can't share that yet, but there's going to be a lot more coming. But I tell you, they're going to be in different genres. So we have sports now, but then we're going to have culinary arts, and we're going to have fashion experiences. And so basically there's just going to be a little for, everyone to choose from, depending on what their desire is and what their hobbies look like. And so I really want a platform where people, again, can celebrate life, even with challenging times, and still have the best time I can provide for them in a virtual world.
Right. How did you come up with this idea? I mean, this is a huge pivot. You're trying to throw parties, and you have to come up with it. How did that happen? Was there a moment of inspiration or something?
There was a moment of a lot of work. I can tell you that. Really, I was at Crossroad where I thought to myself, okay, how are we going to A, be ahead of the game, B, make it very exciting? I mean, I myself going through these Zoom conversations, it was very frustrating for me. I was grateful for the technology, but at the same token, I was like, people all want to celebrate, but with Zoom, there's complications with technology. You can only speak once at a time without, can't hear everyone. So I'm like, look, how do we creatively feel like we're going to an experience that we can't go to, make a mixed fantasy, a virtual reality, and still have human connection? That to me, was one of the biggest ingredients, because I think that's what we're missing right now. We can't hug people. We can't see our families, if they're quarantining and they're older and, immune compromised, whatever it is. So I'm like, okay, these are my challenges. But then again, how do I grab them, above them, and so forth. And that's really what I came up with. It's you have a lot of talent at home right now, because a lot of people are not working in the entertainment industry. So from that aspect, it's they're looking for new innovative ways.
Right.
And I just really honestly took the feeling of, I'm not worrying about yesteryear or yesterday. I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about what does our future for the long term look like, and how do we solve a problem? And that to me was, the focus also, because I think we're in the long haul for virtual reality moving forward. I do think live events will come back, but I don't know what it will look like and how soon. No, I really wanted to try to fill that gap. I did see a big gap with live events and where we are today. So
it's hard to light up a room via Zoom. It just is, comedians are trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying, you can sing your heart out, but there's just not that thing that happens, when you're in the room with the performer. It's tough, but I know these performers are all willing to try. I mean, on the show, we talked to all kinds of people like that, and they're all trying to figure it out, because it's just, it's one thing to capture a magic moment that was live that translates via video. It's a whole different thing to live over video and like grab people emotionally, you know?
It's tough. I want to say use the word magic. And the first photo shoot that Andy and I did with an 8-year-old boy, I said to him, when I got off the phone, I'm like, we just created magic. That's exactly what we just did, because again, the surreal reality, but at the same token, like you could see how joyful this, young boy was and how excited he was. And I'm like, if we can do that for people while we're in the midst of this heaviness, okay, then that truly is magic. And so if I can't do it for 50,000 people at one time, at least I can do it at least one person at a time, and moving forward like that. So, and that to me is, you can change one life, you can help change the world. So
when you explained art fun parties earlier, it was kind of a youthful thing, like with kids, but this is, I'm assuming, for anybody who's trying to have some kind of a party at home.
It's for all ages. We just, initially the concept was starting with children, but not only is it for all ages, but eventually a brand, talking about brands and big companies will do parties and brand launches and things like that, where these are the things that I'm used to. So I'll bring in different aspects of, even brand placement. So I'm excited to, from an advertising perspective, by the way, for me, this is a platform where you can completely change the face of advertising and marketing and really integrate it into the experience in totally different ways. So I have a lot of ideas, but you got to start somewhere. And I really wanted to start with where I felt like, everyone has a version of suffering right now, but I really felt for children. This started happening. They're school, their young minds, I don't know, are truly knowing how to process everything that's going on. And I wanted to do something for mental health of, just our society as a whole. And this is why I started with kids.
Yeah, the mental health aspect and self-care and all those sort of things. Or if you are locked up in a hospital, it literally is possible with your stuff to have a party while you're recuperating and not able to have visitors. You can literally throw your loved one a laptop and a party right there. I think it's such a great, given what we're dealing with right now, and we just don't know, like someone in our house had COVID. Can they go out and walk around? Are they going to transfer it back because they can't get sick? Are they going to get sick? We just don't know any of these things. So when you have these opportunities to create these moments, I love that you're giving that a real shot. And it seems like that's something that people should just be flying toward you to try to get some smiles on their faces and some magic in their hearts.
Yeah. So, and funny from my perspective, people I can see haven't fully wrapped around the idea of, oh my gosh, it's 100% virtual. I don't have to go anywhere. They still think that they have a hybrid scenario where it's still in person, because we're in this learning curve. I think as a whole, is just figuring out that we don't have to leave our house for something. And that, again, is just another form of that marketing, where you have to let people really understand that this is such a forward-thinking concept, such an innovative tone to an artistic world. That takes a minute for people to understand too. So it's exciting for me though, because that means I'm on the right track. And again, what I told you earlier is my job is to make something that people have not seen before, but that also has its own set of challenges at the same time. That's okay, because so does everything in the world.
For the parent out there that's like, I need to do this, I just don't get it. Like, how does it work? Do they go to the website? Do they do a consultation with you? How does one go about booking you for this thing?
So they sign up. There's a book now form, and you just click the button, and then they will basically a sheet to fill out. I ask specific questions: what their favorite hobbies, favorite players, things like that, depending on if that's the sports experience. And then we go back and forth basically once or twice, depending on how we're going to curate and customize everything. And then we schedule a Zoom. We start with, and depending on what package, it starts with Zoom, and then it's pre-produced. So I do the pre-production with them. And then once I have that, then it goes into post-production. Then we deliver the entire experience to them, and we can put that on Facebook Live. We could do a Zoom party, however they want, with the rest of the people. But that, again, for me was another challenge, is how are you going to present something that has high quality to it as best as you can, and not have this kind of like Zoom mess happening. So that's why it's to do pre-production, because then you have more quality control over the, content, and from the artistic freedom, you have more freedom to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you're right. It's a challenge, and you have to, at some point, this is what we've got, and we go with it. And that's sort of the COVID thing, is like, you can strive for perfection, but ultimately, COVID says no, and the extra circumstances and all the walls get in the way. You go with what you got. I wanted to ask, I was reading the interview that you did that I referenced earlier. Let me put the link up, because it's a great interview in Women's Business Daily. You talked about your grandmother and how she went through the Holocaust, and that's got to be, I mean, a pandemic is nothing compared to that, So what do you gain? What do you learn from your grandmother and her experiences going through that kind of evil and coming out in the other end? And the bulk of her life is post Holocaust. What informs you about her experience in her life?
She was the foundation for me of how to understand human condition, respect for human life, and really the first layer of my understanding of what it is to have, an empathetic view on a human being. And so that was very powerful for me in many ways, because I have foundation. And I mean, it was an everyday that I had to be around it, because you saw her post-traumatic stress, you saw her fear, you saw her just, her fragile state coming off something like that. And so you respect life in a totally different way. For me, I always wanted to take those lessons and apply them with whatever I was doing. And that's where I think my foundation of trying to help other human beings really came from. I'm very sensitive to others' suffering. And so no matter what, I always say pain is pain, no matter how one got there, the way you deal with it and the way you cope with it really comes down to very similar methods. And I've had personal, very difficult health journeys, and her lessons for me, from not only the professional side, but the personal side, makes me realize, don't complain unless, you be very cautious of what you complain about, because it can always be worse. Secondly, knowing that freedom is not free. And that's really another thing. I for just my creativity in general, the fact that I get to utilize my creativity in the day, that's a luxury. And not everyone gets to do that. So I take her fight, I take her skill. I really think about her in a daily form, where if I have challenges, I think to myself, okay, they're not in consent, they're not even close. So let's just take the strength, move on, and keep on going and find that triumph over adversity. And that's what my whole brand is about, is triumph over adversity and figuring out creative ways to get there, because she sure did, and so did everyone else who's, they're all miracles at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point. That triumph over adversity, and again, you don't want to take on anyone else's problems, because all of a sudden you realize how bad it can be. No matter how comfortable you are financially or socially or mentally, everybody's problems are extremely uncomfortable to them where they're at. I put on the show notes here, the Facebook page for Art Fun Parties Online. You can go there. You can go on Instagram. In general, just, I love that you're doing this. I love that you start a business, surprise, everything's going to change. You're a tough lady, to say, okay, we're just going to pivot, and I'm just going to start, reinventing what I just invented. I admire that. And I love that at least 3 times you referenced hard work and not complaining too much. I just think that those are, no matter where you are politically or anything else, you have a real opportunity to outwork your problems and outthink your problems if you just keep after it. There are very few barriers that are universal. And I love that attitude of, this pandemic came here and screwed everything up. I'm going to get back to work, and I'm going to continue to figure it out, because that never stops anyhow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try to people, sorry, you cut out a little too, but I think I got what you said. Yeah. I think that people, I've learned too, is that with adversity, because I've had so much of it, is you have 2 choices. You either fall to depression, and sometimes not a choice even, or you try to find methods to keep your head above water. And it's really sink or swim. It's really, those are the A and B options. And for me, I always try my best to swim, and not easy. I tell people it's like a language. You have to practice, at it every single day. And no matter what the challenges, and we all have challenges and we all have adversity. I mean, this is life. We're never going to ever get away from that. But it's really how your mental spirit deals with it. It's really about how your physical aspect deals with it, and trying to combine all of that together. To what lens are you going to look through when you're faced with something? Are you going to find the victim lens? Are you going to find something that, the poor me lens? Or are you going to say, I'm going to look through this lens, I'm going to try to take the lessons from it and really try to optimize the opportunity? Because I'm a big believer that it doesn't feel it at the time, but there is beauty in pain where you can find it. There's always a beautiful experience. Like right now, we are in extremely challenging for a lot of different reasons. But with that, there are such beautiful things happening too, with people trying to unify and trying to help other human beings. And so sometimes the worst can bring out the best. And it's things like that where I really try to look the lens of trying to find the optimism and hope, some busier than others, but I try my best. It's like I said, and it's about having help around you too. It's not only about you. You need to look where you can't get and fill your own glass. Try to look for other things that can put a smile on your face, whether it's listening to music or whatever it is, the small things day by day, like a language, like learning a language to become fluent, those eventually will help you keep your head above water. And that's what I try to tell people all the time by experience.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say sink or swim, because in about an hour, I will be in the pool swimming. And I do that obviously for my physical well-being, but also my mental well-being. I get in the pool and I go swim, and I think about Eric Dickerson, to use another sports analogy. And, his record for rushing in one season is 2,105 yards. And I'm like, well, I'm at least going to do that, because it's a little more than a mile, and I go out and swim it. But I never, ever, ever feel bad after I swim. Even if the swim is not great and everything else, I always feel better, if not fantastic. And then the other things that you have to do, like, I went to the Sierra, took a vacation, looked around, and just spent time looking at trees and nature and just filling my head with these other images. I think artistically, spiritually, mentally, we have to constantly churn what's there. You have to churn the soil. You go out and plant things and be patient and work hard, but you have to also find these other things that take you out of your headspace, because you're right, depression chases me every day. But if I constantly keep things moving, keep investing and knowing that if I get out of that pool in an hour, I'm going to feel better, then that's where my effort needs to be, so that the rest of my day is enriched through that hard work.
Yeah, I love that, because that's your form of your own therapy. And that's what I try to, help people find is like, okay, it may not be art, which I use as therapy all the time. But whatever you're doing at home, finding that outlet that can just take your mind off something and give you some, not only time to yourself, but also just a therapeutic environment, looking at something pleasant, you're feeling your endorphins, however that is. It's a combination of that mental and physical technique where you don't think it's going to help so much, but it really truly does, because it gets you out of that current state of, if you're just watching the news for the past 2 hours, you got to get out of that mindset where, the whole world's going to end and depression is just waiting around the corner. So it's really important putting yourself in positive places. And that's what I try to tell people, with art fun parties too. It's an artistic therapeutic outlet, because art allows you to do things that others can't express, most times, or you're feeling too vulnerable. And now the World Health Organization has said that, art has now become like an official option where they found it to be more therapeutic than an official therapy session with a therapist. And so that's the thing. It's just, what's your creative spot? What's your happy place? And I tell people, find your happy place. I think that's the best medicine anyone can do right now, really.
One of the things that we all start as pretty artistic kids and expressive, or finger painting and all those kind of things, but we lose that along the way, whether we're inspired by music or cooking or art in some form or fashion. What are your words of advice to all of us as we're trying to, we all started motivated. I'm going to write my book when COVID locked us down, but now it's dragged on for a long time. So how does someone rediscover or inspire the artist within them? And then I know you talked before in the interview about don't worry about what other people say, but talk to that person who's just trying to figure out their artist.
I think people, like cooking or art, they start dabbling into things that, either act as a hobby and something they find that they're good at, but most of the point, that they enjoy. And I think that, that trend of feeling good about yourself, feeling good about what you're doing. And I think that's where someone should start and just test. You know what? I'm always trying to advocate, like trying something new, because you just never know. You never know. You think you know sometimes, but sometimes things will surprise you. And like you said, swimming. Someone might say, I don't like swimming. I've never swam, whatever. And then they get in the pool, then they realize how they feel, and then they go from there. So I always keep your eyes open, your mind open, and embrace, whatever X factor is that's coming to you. But sometimes the universe is putting something in your path for you to test out, and I think embracing that is the first key.
Yeah, I say spend more time in the pool, spend more time on a canvas, spend more time with your guitar, your flute in your hand, and way less time on TV. If you're watching the news more than you're creating, you're going to feel worse. I promise. It's absolute promise.
Everyone has creativity. That's what I want, people to really understand, is that we're all special in our own unique ways, and we all have a creative outlet. We have to just kind of navigate sometimes to find what that is, but everyone has such a special quality to provide in this world. And I think when people truly understand that and embrace that, our world can change and evolve to be a better place, just that alone.
Well, listen, in spite of our connection problems and everything else, it's been great to connect with you. Thank you so much to Shay. Thank you so much to you, Shanna, for coming on. Everybody can check out Art Fun Parties really simply at artfunparties.com. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. And I just think it's such a great way to inspire that kid that didn't get to graduate like they wanted to, or that kid that didn't get to have the best birthday party ever. You've got a chance now to make something truly magic happen. Get over to artfunparties.com and set up a chance to do something really special. Thank you again so much, Shanna. Anything in closing at all?
I just want to, first of all, say thank you to you and for this opportunity. And really, if somebody has the thought of what they would like to celebrate their life and what they wanted, if they want to curate a unique idea, I'm always up for options and listening to what, they're looking to do. So I welcome the creative process. So if it's not sports, I'm open to hearing other thoughts and ideas. So I'm excited to explore with everybody.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off here.
Bye-bye.